Hello, and welcome to Big 20, where we go behind the GM screen. My name is Dan. This week I am joined by...
Mike.
And
All right. So, what do we want to talk about this week? I have a question for you guys. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, prepping for the next game that I'm going to run. Something hopefully I think is going to be hopefully long-term. Is throughout my entire gaming career, as far back as I can remember, I don't think I have ever been a part of a game that does true XP. D&D game that does true XP, like what we always hear, the old school way of doing things. Rogues get XP for gold, fighters get kills, etc., etc. Never done per encounter XP. It's all nearly always been this milestone style XP. So I have some ideas about why that is, but I want
my fault.
It's Mike's fault. Yes, well, and I understand why. We'll get into it. But I think if I were to frame this episode with an inflammatory segment, is I think it's made us lazy gamers and lazy GMs. I understand that GMing has there's a lot of work that goes into it, but from the player side, it's made us kind of lazy, I think. We often talk about how maybe some of the peripheral classes are less interesting. Well, that's because we're not really incentivizing people to get into their roles. We're not rewarding people for playing to their classes. We're rewarding people for getting to the end. And in a game where I think a lot of us would think that the journey is nearly as important, if not more important, than the destination, maybe we need to divvy out these things as we go along. So I just want to talk about real XP. How do we do it? Why did we get away from it? And let's see where this goes. Go ahead. Enjoy.
Let's see. I'm just going to start in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
One reason for not doing XP, of course, we're mostly talking D&D, but that would be because it's a bookkeeping nightmare. You can't necessarily always trust people to do their math right, or if the DM's doing it, then maybe, then that's just more work for them. And then, of course, you run into attendance problems.
Okay.
People fall way behind.
I was going to say that I absolutely do not care about people fudging numbers or cheating. I don't care. Because if somebody's going to do that, they're going to do that. They're going to find a way to do that regardless, right? And if that's how they want to play, that's fine. I can't prevent that. But I guess the getting behind, that's one thing that I hadn't actually really put a whole lot of thought into. I personally don't mind playing as a player in a group where other people are a higher level than me. That doesn't.
Oh, neither do I.
But I understand that could be a sticking point for some people.
Well, as it is now, we're playing in a game where we do story-based leveling up, and we still don't know what level everyone actually is.
That's partially why I wanted to bring.
We were playing like 1 or 2 sessions, and we were like, no one knew what level they were.
And on everybody's character sheet, it got to the point where we would forget to even increase the level. Like, I'll take the whatever event of that level is, but I didn't actually level up my character. I didn't write from 3 to 4 because I think the milestone XP is it's a little bit meh to me anyway. It seems a little anticlimactic. I know we joke that at the end, when it's nice to be able to say, ding, you all level. That's nice. It gets a good reaction out of the party. But I think nothing beats knowing what you need. And like, I could level on this encounter. I could level off talking to this guy. I could level off of picking this lock. These seem like things that would really keep players engaged. What do you think, Eric?
I think that milestone leveling's killing the game. And
I love inflammatory statements. Yes.
The reason I say that is
that's our clickbait title for this, by the way.
Exactly. The reason I say that is because no two people experience the same thing the same way. And to say that everybody advances at the same level, I mean, that's putting everybody inside the same box, and it doesn't work that way.
It's one of those, if everybody's special, nobody's special kind of thing.
Exactly right.
Maybe a little bit.
Exactly right. And, and I understand that, hey, the fighter's going to get XP from fighting things, and, the cleric's going to get XP from doing cleric things, be it, converting worshipers or casting spells or whatever it is, but that's that's their job. I think that once you go away from specialized XP for class based, and this is purely D&D, people aren't as apt to do their job. They want to do everybody else's job. But if I only get XP for doing my thief shit, then I'm doing my thief shit, because I'm not going to do everybody else's job too.
Yeah, because it seems like you would you'd be incentivized to only do your thing and not step on other people's toes. But a side product of that is dual classing takes on a really interesting mentality, right? Generally, before you dual class, you hamstring yourself. But if I'm dual classing, I'm getting XP for two different things. So that might help to level that out a little bit. And I wouldn't be so far behind on the power curve kind of thing. I was trying to think about, like, how would you pull this off in a way, because again, I get that this occurs because of bookkeeping, because it's just another thing to keep track of. So what if we broke it down into kind of try to figure out the core mechanic of the class, figure out what makes it special, what's its role within the group, and try to divvy up XP based on that. Right. So, and this is D&D terms, where this thought started for me was, what if the fighter got experience for hit points dealt? Because you can't get it. Keeping track of kills is a pain, because, well, how do you gauge that? Because somebody might get the last hit and take down the guy, and that hamstrings the fighter.
Yeah, but that also can cause some really fun drama, because then you've got people like our friend Sean who would just get your kill for no reason, just to deny you those XP.
I that would be, yes, I would get that, but
and then it's like you want to like you would even take a shot for your enemy. You would step in front of a shot for your so your friend couldn't gank your kill.
That would be, I guess it would be fun to do, like, if you were running two games at once, like if I was running two games at once, and on one game over here, fighters are getting XP based on damage dealt, and over here you're getting it based on last hit, essentially. I wonder how that would go down. It would incentivize like, can you imagine a monk in that scenario? Like, he could still, like, 3 kills in a round, pow, pow, pow.
Right.
Just because he's so overloaded with attacks.
Right, or you have, like, let's say an assassin class. You would have incentive for going last. You would delay your action.
Yeah, well, I think also in a world where we're doing milestone XP, generally speaking, we have big events, we have big fights, right? D&D is kind of, that's, your evening has a big encounter, is a big fight, because that's what people are getting their experience off of. Well, if we're getting our experience from things other than fighting, that totally changes the way we can write an adventure, the way we can run our evening, right? I think again, also based on, like, we do this milestone thing because this is kind of how adventures are written now. You have your this week session, you have your big fight or two, depending on how much you get through. And that's the nature of the game. And we see this across all kinds of games. This isn't a Wizards D&D brand thing. The Pathfinder adventure paths are the exact same way. As good as they are, that's just the nature of how they're written. And I think that's because we've gotten into this mentality that, well, XP is a pain in the ass and we're just going to hand wave it and you get it at the end, right? I believe yes, you should, for achieving a goal, hitting a milestone, that should be like a clump of experience for the entire group, like evenly distributed.
Right.
But we still need to make people special. I love we often talk about the Gandalf in the party, the high level guy. What if somebody, he just through role play, through the type of character he is, and he just kind of gets ahead of everybody else? Well, that's okay if you've earned it, right? If it's not just kind of being handed out, if you've earned it, and you can show it because I've done all these things. So now you have a really high level person in the party with some chodes, and that throws adventures way off track. And you can do some really interesting things, I would think.
Yeah, and you could, and if you do, say, class specific XP like the back in the old days, then if you're doing combat heavy adventures, then yeah, sure, your paladin, your fighter, your barbarian's going to be getting more XP, but it also incentivizes, let's say, other types of adventures, right? So that way it's like the wizard's going, we're not going to go get involved in this war because we did your thing last time. Let's do my thing this time.
Sure.
Or if the paladin says, well, let's quest for my magic, holy avenger. Okay, we did that. Now let's go and look for this artifact that's going to help me. If you're doing these things, that are, people are going to say, oh, well, you can do that anytime. You can inject that anytime. But if you're incentivizing it with advancement, then that makes it that much more personal. And, it's a decent thing to do if you're basing everything off of milestones and these amorphous things that, you want to hit these milestones in your adventure and everybody dings at the same time. You don't get that same kind of a rush that you do with, individual, if let's say, for instance, you're doing real-time XP and you've got, let's say 150, 200 XP before you're going to level up. You may stay in the fight a little bit longer than you probably should.
You definitely would if you ran it the way I really want to run it. I want to run it Diablo style, where when you level, you gain full hit points. Just like in Diablo, ding, full hit points, changes the tide of a battle, right? That makes, you could make fights, like you kind of know where your players, you would have to know where your players' experience are. And you could design a fight around the idea that the fighter might level in the middle of it. He may be getting his ass completely handed to him, but he finally gets the XP he needs. He levels up, turns the tide of battle. Now you put like a narrative to that. That is an epic story, right?
Well, that's
huge.
That's your Hulk Hogan, hulking up, right? Because in the middle of the fight, all of a sudden he leveled in the middle of his fight, and now he's going to kick your ass.
He got his like a real second wind. So I don't. It's interest. I think it opens up some possibility, and I know it's more work, but this might be one of those things. I think the work might be worth it.
Well, and you always get the same thing. It's everybody should be having fun, and the game masters should run the game for the players.
That is a utopia game, and I don't think that this exists.
That's unicorn game, right?
Yeah,
because that doesn't exist. Because if you were truly doing that, then you would be doing in combat leveling. Because something that's a milestone to one, just like what I said before, things that people advance, mentally, physically at different paces. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're going through the same experience or not. So same thing goes for, a fight or whatever. People get things out of things that other people don't. And a milestone may be a milestone to one character, it's the big plot, the plot piece of this story. Well, that's really, it could only be important to the game master. And then who really gives a shit? So, but, somebody jumps over a flaming pit to one shot the big boss, that's a momentous moment. You
Yeah.
should ding after that.
Yeah, agreed. I totally agree. You should get a big chunk after huge events. I think the hardest part about all of this. So I was kind of going through. Some classes are a little bit easier to deal with than others, but the one I had the most difficulty with, and kind of why we're talking about this in the first place, is how do you level the wizard? Based upon what criteria in this vein? Like fighters get it on HP, rogues get it on the use of roguely abilities, because that also, I think, really, like, if a rogue is getting experience for pickpocketing people, whether they get anything good, like, they're going to keep doing it, and they're going to get in some shit, right? Over a long enough timeline, the rogue is going to get caught,
right?
And is that XP worth it, right?
Sure.
So,
Well,
but backtrack.
Hey, getting caught, that's part of being a crook, right? You
Yeah,
learn from that.
Yeah, I agree. But so what do you do with the wizard? Like with some of these caster classes, to me, that's tough. I don't know if you could do raw damage on them because of the nature of their spells. Like they're gonna, like, a fighter's gonna get consistent damage over time, right? But we know, based on math, because of cantrips and bigger spells, wizards out damage them. So I don't think you could base a wizard's contribution, like their contribution is spells, is damage a lot of the time. But I don't know that we could do XP unless you were doing like a percentage of health done. I don't know. See, it's ideas like this that ruin the big picture, right? This is that one little thing, because you have to be able to do it across all classes. And if you can't do the wizard, you can't do any of them. That's kind of how I see this. So I don't know how to do the wizard.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but used to be the wizard used to get experience points based on the level of spell that he cast, or she cast, I should say.
Okay.
So do it that way. It's base. If you want to do damage, do damage. If it's not in combat, then do it some other way. But it's like damage based per level of spell. And what that would do, it would incentivize the caster to cast their big spells,
not hold on to them,
and not cantrip every single round. Make cantrips worth nothing.
Yeah. I could see that. That's yeah.
And so that way it's like because you never know how long a fight's going to last. Your wizard may actually lead off with the big dog, right? Do their 5th level spell right out the gate.
Chop their leg off and just lean on them.
Exactly. You're sitting on, a lot of times on these things. It's like, oh man, I want to save it. I want to hold on to it until like the last moment to have this like catastrophic effect and do the one shot or whatever. Sure, that's cool. But more times than not, you're sitting on that 5th level spell and the fight's over.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh well.
And then you're at the end of the day and you've cast nothing, right? Because of that fear.
Yeah, you've cantripped all night long because really.
See, that works. That's really good because that incentivizes the behavior that we kind of want, right? We want people to cast their stuff. We want people to do these things and not hold on to them for fear that I might lose. But if you're getting experience for casting a spell, you are casting that spell every opportunity.
Right.
We might be resting a whole lot more under this.
Well, that's true. It's like, oh shit, I'm out of my 5th level spell. Yeah, but you got all these cantrips. I'm not casting that crap.
Right. So that's an interesting one. That has legs. I like that.
That was right, Mike? The old days of D&D?
Close.
Close? Okay.
And so long I don't know.
Okay.
It was close, but it was close enough to be a maybe.
Okay. Well, it got going in the right direction. That's all that really matters. Yeah. So another reason I wanted to do this, when I wanted to talk about this again, is those peripheral classes that don't get a whole lot of love for whatever reason. And let's talk about the greatest joke among D&D classes has been for as long as I can remember is the bard. What if your bard got experience based on the number of people that they influence, right? If you got experience for singing a song, doing a limerick, doing whatever it is that your bard is doing, based on the number of people.
You could say the number of people he bangs could be a factor
That
into that.
exactly. That could, if you're a charlatan style, why not? I mean, it's whatever behavior you want to incentivize, like however your character is designed. If you're like in other games, you want to play a charismatic person, really high influence, it's going to incentivize you to do it as often as possible. So yeah, I thought if you were a bard, how often we get those is pretty rare. But if you got your experience, let's say I'm in the tavern and the fight's about to break out, and you sing you influence, you inspire, you do whatever, and you got experience for the whole room, that would make a pretty compelling case to play a bard, I think, in a world where nobody wants to play a bard. Mike, you got something. I can feel it.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the old days, the different classes, Bard was a little weird, but all the classes had their own XP charts.
That's right, they did. Yeah.
Which I don't know how that. I mean, since then they got two standardized charts, and then if you want to talk Pathfinder, they got fast, normal, and slow track for XP advancement. There's there's a lot of different ways you can come at this.
I totally forgot about the non-standardized leveling. A lot of math. See, old D&D was mathematically cumbersome because a lot of things hadn't been figured out at that point, right? I get that. You could easily do Pathfinder-style fast track by simply adding a multiplier, right? If you want your campaign to go a little bit faster, whatever your base criteria for XP is times 2, or you want to go really fast is times 3, right? So that would be pretty simple, I think, as long as you got what criteria you have down. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to get 90% of your level from this, right? It just needs to be enough to work with your milestones, to keep people engaged, to keep people wanting to do the things that their class was meant to do, right?
Right.
That's the way I see it anyway.
Well, then it could get real sticky though, because you could get to you could really get off track, like what is in quest stuff, what is downtime stuff. It will really start to blur the line there. The bard sees that he's like 50 XP away, and never mind what the other people are, and he'd be like, well, let's not go into the Tomb of Horrors yet. I gotta go play a concert in this bar real quick to get my XP. You're just doing like little needless side things just because you can game the system.
Then you gotta spike his drink, and when he's out cold, you just take him wherever. You have to be Baracus him, right? So yeah, no, I could see that it could fracture a party to a degree. I could see that.
Let me put it to you this way though, and it's a great RP moment. Okay, you finish the adventure, you come into the bar. The bard is all kinds of pissed off because he's 50 experience points away from leveling. He walks
and that's one of the reasons I stopped doing XP. Was XP begging. Okay.
Well, that's certainly a thing. But if you say, okay, well, let's turn it into an RP moment. Okay, so now he's like, everybody else is like, hey, I'm going to go train. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that because, I've got these XP. And the bard's just kind of sitting there like, I didn't advance, blah, blah, blah. And then, the bartender says, what do you have, Mac? And he looks up and goes, well, how you doing? It might incentivize them into maybe dipping into a different kind of barrel, you might say. It's like our friend Brian used to, like, oh, who's the hottest chick in here, and whatever. And
Right.
let's say you rolled up, and instead of 3 10s, you roll up 10 3s. And so then normally he'd be like, oh, no way. And then, but if he's 50 XP away, he might actually think about it.
Yeah, exactly. So now, and this is a super radical idea, and I have floated it past you guys in the past, but I'm going to bring it up here just because I think it kind of fits, kind of along those lines about, the party can be fractured and want to get into doing just their own thing. Okay. What if, okay, so over here we have class experience and people getting XP for doing whatever it is that they do. And then we have milestone experience over here. Like in the evening, the GM kind of knows what they're going to get. What if whatever you plan for that night, milestone XP wise, that these 15 things are going to occur or could occur if they follow the path. What if at the beginning of the night, they knew there was a potential of 1,000 experience available? Okay. Milestone wise. Oh, you got a chunk of 100. Oh, here you got a chunk of 150, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, when they're short, they don't hit that 1,000. Like, what did we miss?
Well, it's just like,
right?
it's like seeing a map and there's a blank spot in the map. We've got to go look and see what's over here because there's something over here. If they know going into the night that there's 1,000 XP available for that night and they've only got 600, they're like, we're missing something.
Yeah, or we really screwed up, or, what have we done wrong? And it's possible, like, you could write an adventure, like, so 1,000 is a nice round number, but based on choices you make, you might not qualify for that 1,000. Like, you make at this fork in the road, let's say you may lose 300 potential XP just based on the choices that you make. And that might actually make adventure design a little bit easier on the GM side and doing your experience. Like, I know here are these things that they do and they're worth this many XP each. Then you just know if you hit it, you hit a check mark, that's 100, check mark, 300, blah, blah, whatever the numbers are. So maybe that would alleviate some of the bookkeeping. But for several years now, I've been thinking about what if people knew ahead of time? Would that incentivize, like, because we're always trying to fix the dick around time, the derailing and the side stuff that keeps us from gaming. It's like, well, if we knew how much XP, maybe that's a carrot on the stick to keep people going.
Right. Or
I don't know.
Or, it could be we have this much XP available, adventure wise, plus, if you get it done soon enough, maybe there might be a little bonus time for dick around or, side stuff or stuff like that. So maybe instead of dicking around in the middle of the adventure, they're going, okay, let's get this objective taken care of, and then we can do our screw around stuff for a little bonus time, do it that way. There is something, and I am a fan of XP. So, I would say that I'm more apt to do XP than milestone, nowadays, because I just think that milestone's it's just a little too vanilla for me. But there is a couple of sticking points for me when it comes to, distributing XP, and that's the awarding XP for roleplay. I think basically you either have to be a humongous dickhead to do that, or you're just giving everybody the same anyway. Because if I'm going to sit, because what you're doing is you're sitting in judgment of other people and how they play.
It's a critique.
Yeah,
it's a critique
and how they play. So it's like,
and it's a subjective critique.
Sure it is. And so you're like, okay, Mike, you know what? You really did an awesome job, and I love the way you did a back and forth with me. So I'm going to give you some RP XP. But Joe Schmo over here, who may be just a little socially awkward, fuck you. That's what that means. So,
Okay. Well, how about this then? Let's borrow from things that we're already talking about. What if throughout the evening, our players know about XP, right? what if part of that is player distributed? Like here's a bucket. In a given night, you have 500 XP that can be divvied up, right? And it's up to the players to then determine who gets what pieces of that bucket.
Yeah, what you're talking about is post game giving out the game ball. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You did an awesome job at this. Here's the game ball, buddy.
Maybe everybody has like an equal amount to give.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
maybe.
Say, all right, you got five players, you got 500 XP, and you go, okay, each of you get 100 XP to distribute to whoever you want, not yourself, you assholes, but to somebody else, and give it to somebody who you think deserved it for the night, and somebody could end up with 400 XP because they're not going to give the 100 to themselves.
Again, and that creates potentially that level disparity, which I personally like. And again, I know that might bug a lot of people. Mike, how do you think that would go down?
I also think it could be gamed.
Well, okay, yeah, but see, again, I am operating under the impression that I don't care. If people want to cheat and people want to, if that's what people want to do, like at
that would be a collusion of gaming the system.
Wait a minute, I'm only 300. I could hear Jason saying this too. I'm only 300 away from leveling, so I should totally get it. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, well, if these are the kind of behaviors you think are going to happen, then you immediately set your guidelines as this is not a potential. Right, or you give the GM final veto,
or like you said, don't
for
care.
XP stacking. Yeah, or you don't care. Like for us, we game with our friends, and if we're going to XP stack and we're going to do this, we're doing it because it's us, right? And you can't get rid of us
for the group anyway. Because it's like, oh, I know that Dan is going to level, and it'd be in my best interest if he does. Then sure, why not? But that's you could, but inevitably you're going to have the Sean or someone who's going to go, no, I'm not giving that to you because you didn't give me this or you didn't do that.
And this is you're in. I think this is one of those rare black and white moments. They are either Sean and they are your friend, and there's nothing you can do about it,
right? Or
this is a game, a pickup game, like in a shop, and you don't know that person. Then you decide whether this person continues to game with you or not. If this type of behavior is unacceptable to you, then they're not a part of your party anymore.
Right.
To me, it's that simple.
Yeah. Before we get too far into the weeds.
Okay. Too late.
Too late. We are doing a giveaway tonight.
Yes.
We are giving away a set of dice to one of our viewers. So if you want to be in the running for a set of dice, it's a full set of baby shit brown polyhedral dice with bag. So if you're interested, direct message Dan in the chat and let him know that you're interested, and then we will determine who gets the set of dice via die roll. So we'll remind you near the end of the episode that we're doing this. So sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to get that out of the way before it got later. So you were talking earlier about attendance, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why it's good to do XP for advancement, because not only does that incentivize attendance, if you're doing if you're here you get the XP, if you're not, you're not. People are more apt to go, I got to make sure I make the game. Or it makes them go, damn, I missed a game because of life happens. Screw it, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to waste my time because I'm going to be behind everybody. I'm of the camp that you should give XP like a nightly XP. It's like, okay, everybody's guaranteed 100 XP tonight just for showing up, and why not? Because you're probably going to give that away anyway, but you tell everybody that. And you know what? Hey, life happens, and if you can't make a game session, no worries. I'll still give your character 50 XP because I don't want you falling too far behind, and I'm actually, believe it or not, a decent guy. I don't want you to fully feel like you're missing out. So that way, if you miss a session, you're not going, well, God, I'm going to be like so far behind. But it's,
okay, I like this. This bears mentioning because you keep saying because I'm behind. So what is the problem with being behind traditionally is the rest of the adventure is designed in a certain way, right? And if you are behind, you are less effective in that adventure. And in this world we're talking about, you're ineffective in the fight.
absolutely.
Right? Well, if your adventure and your XP system is designed around things other than fighting, you're never truly behind if you're comparing yourself, right? A thief is always behind the fighter in I can kick people's ass, right? A mage or, a barbarian is always behind the bard in the ability to talk to people, right? So how you gauge what is behind becomes completely irrelevant when that player is only concerned with themselves, right? Like I exist in this bubble and I do my thing. I am not as good as I hope to be because I missed a day, but I'm not behind other people because we're doing things other than fighting.
Right. Well, I mean, sure, but where you run into the biggest problem with that is when you have if you're scaling your adventures to equal the average level of the party. That's where you run into problems, because then you're talking about, and we had this problem in a game that we played in where one of our players, for whatever reason, was sick or she couldn't make it and missed a few sessions, and we were doing milestone leveling, and the idea was, you know what, your character really wasn't there, so how can I justify you getting leveling up with everybody else because you didn't experience the same things. So then every fight we got into up until that character caught up, quote unquote, they were knocked out and they had to sit there and watch us play. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to sit and watch everybody else play while their character's unconscious.
This is true. Okay, so let me borrow a video game concept for this. We see this in MOBAs, your Dotas, your Leagues, your Heroes of the Storm. You have this concept of catch-up XP, that the people who are behind are getting a larger percentage because the things around them are so much more difficult. So maybe if you have somebody, this is all math. It's just a multiplier. If somebody is, let's say, a level behind the average of the party, maybe they get a 0.5 multiplier to, let's say your rogue's behind a level. Every lock they pick is now 1.5 times the experience of what it normally would have been. Or, your fighter was sick. God forbid. Right. You're out without your fighter, so you're doing things. So all the damage you do is, 0.5 again is much XP. So you can close that gap a little bit quicker. Sure. Maybe. That's how, like I say, that's how MOBAs deal with this issue.
Yeah. If there was a way to do it, you could almost do that in Pathfinder. If you're below the curve, you're on fast track XP. If you're above the curve, you're on slow track XP until everybody catches up to you.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know how that would work, but it sounds good. Yeah.
It should work, right? It's just math. The hope is that it just wouldn't matter in the end, right? Unless it becomes like somebody is so far behind that you have a hard time writing the adventure because you know that they're just going to die. Mm-hmm. But again, that's an interesting story that, how is this chode in with these super advanced people? And we know it's because it's our friend Sean and he only gets to game like once every couple months, right? But if you were to take the game as a narrative, that's kind of an interesting narrative, the chode in with the advanced people, or it's an escort mission, and you have to take care of this person. And if you're the priest and you're getting experience off of healing, you love having a guy like that in your party because he's just an XP farm. Sure. You're going down all the time. I'm healing the shit out of you.
Right.
So,
Well, that's a good point.
Serves a purpose.
Yeah, it serves a good, or yeah, healing. You'd want people who are higher level than you. You'd want to be the lower one because they have a higher XP max. So you just be like, oh yeah, I'm glad this guy has 400 experience points or 400 hit points. Heal.
I can farm him for a while, and again, and maybe in the end, it would all kind of level itself out.
I'll ride
over,
ride in his backpack for the whole thing, so that way I can.
Yeah, I think you'd have to kind of go into it with an acceptable level disparity, right? Like, I don't really ever want somebody being like more than 3 levels behind. Because that takes the adventure into a difficult. It makes it hard to write that adventure, maybe. But these are all things. This is why 0 sessions are so important. These are the things that you would talk about ahead of time. You talk about your nightly XP bucket, right? And if you're a heavy RP group, maybe your nightly XP bucket for roleplay is a lot bigger than the party who wants to do tactical combat more often than not. So I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense, and if you go into a game and you're like, okay, you know what, guys, what kind of game do you guys want to play, and how do we want to structure experience points? And they say, well, you know what, I want something with a lot of political intrigue and, backdoor dealings and things like that. So a lot more, interplay and backstabbing and things like that. Then maybe you do put a heavier weight on role play bonuses and things like that. And, dial down the combat. So then if you want to play a fighter, let's say you're playing a combat character, you can still do that, but you might focus on different skills than you normally would. Say you're doing a point buy system for skills, and you're like, okay, normally I'm going to put points in this and points in that, but I'm not going to put any points in, gather info, because who cares? But in a game where the XP is going to be more along the lines of this, maybe you put more points in intimidation because that's how you're going to influence people.
Yeah, when I think, not everything can be rosy, right? I know there are glaring flaws to this that I have yet to foresee, right? Because we can't know all of these things. But I think that the question is, are whatever potential problems with this system worse than the way we're doing it now? And if it gets players more engaged, and I think it would if it incentivizes role play, because you're playing, I'm playing a priest. I'm not playing a fighter who heals. I'm playing a priest, and I get my XP based on that. You're going to play a priest, or you're going to play a rogue, or you're going to play a bard, or whatever, and or a druid. Talking to squirrels. I get experience for talking to squirrels, Eric. This is important. Right. You're going to talk to squirrels more. You're going to role play that more.
Yeah. Is he talking to the squirrel again? He certainly is.
He is. He's farming that squirrel for experience. That son of a bitch. This is how it would be. I don't know. There are no perfect systems, but there are ways to incentivize the behaviors that we want. And, in your 0 session, like you talk about, maybe that's how you would handle some classes. Like, I think, like, the bard plays the bard. Like, I think I should get experience for these types of things, and you decide that at the outset, and that's how you run it. Like, if you're, I want to be a musician bard. I don't want to talk to people. I just want to perform. Okay, so these are the ways in which you gain XP.
Yeah, and it would. Like I said, it would incentivize you to actually play the bard instead of all I'm doing is buffing everybody else in their combats. But if I get experience points for, a great oration to a group of people, or rousing a group of people to burn down a church or something, if that's your thing, it's like a string of natural 20s, you're really getting excited because you're influencing more and more and more people. That means more and more and more XP. You know? I mean, how does a bard, how does a musician gauge success? It's their
The
fan
crowd.
base, right? Their
Yeah,
crowd.
your notoriety.
Exactly. So that makes total sense. The more people you influence, the more popular you are, the more XP you get. You know?
Yeah. Okay, so
Just to clarify something, Fembrek asked in the chat, have we played the 5E Bard? And we have had the Bard and 5E, and they are
Yes.
not as dainty as they were in previous editions.
no, they're not.
They are good.
I have said, if you want to play a bard, this, much like Druid, this 5e is the system to do it in, right? But we know from class breakdowns that Wizard did, people aren't. They still are not playing these classes, and there are reasons why. And again, I think on Wizard's part, it's because the adventures they design are not bard friendly.
No.
Right. So
Right.
you change the way XP works. You incentivize players to do things, and then you can write whatever adventure you want, or you write an adventure that caters to those people because they're your players, right? In the end, we are entertainers. We are providing something for our players, not necessarily ourselves, right? So if you have a group and you have a bard and you want to entertain that person, you want to give them a reason to play, you want to give them fun, right? That's what a GM is. We are fun distributors,
Right.
and the breaker of dreams and hopes.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
Or what is it? They called Mike the assassin of awesome.
The assassin of awesome. That's courtesy of Mutants and Masterminds. One day we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So I had so we've kind of ironed this out to a degree. So let's talk about why we stopped in the first place. Because I have a partial theory, and it's more than just the bookkeeping. I, in large part, blame it on Shadowrun, because we played 2 games, D&D and Shadowrun. Shadowrun is very end of the night. Here's your karma. You complete the mission. Here's your karma. Milestone XP started for us with Shadowrun,
Right.
and I think it bled over into D&D. I think that was a big part. But this is so much easier.
Right.
Who cares? Just screw it.
Right. Well, you're also talking about the level-based structure as opposed to the incremental increase structure. So,
Yeah, spend it as you go. Totally different. I agree.
Right. And so if you have the incremental increases, then every night's a milestone, because you're not there's like 2 camps of thought on that. It's like, the D&D leveling system makes no sense, because you don't go to a certain, level and then bang, all of a sudden you get all of these cool things. But I think people who really, really dislike that system, and the modern game kind of reflects that loss, but it's there's the loss of the original, I think, drive behind that, or at least it's kind of like how hit points are supposed to be this theoretical thing. It's not supposed to be your actual health. It's supposed to be, wearing down your defenses, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Leveling used to be and was supposed to be, you get your experience points, and then you have off time, and you're training, you're researching, you're doing these things, and then bang, the next time you have an adventure, you are now this new level because you've spent X amount of time with your mentor or your sensei or whatever you're doing. But that's really old school thinking, and people got away from that. And now it's like, okay, we just kind of hit this barrier, and bang, all of a sudden we're awesome, or we're awesomer, and then it just kind of lost that flavor of seeking out the mentor or the teacher and things.
Okay.
So there's also losing XP.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, I like
Consider
this.
old
Tell me
editions. When you got drained of levels, depending on where you were at on that chart, it could be a minimal loss, could be loss in the thousands.
So do we want to dock XP for fumbles?
And then even as recent as 3.5, you had to lose XP to make magic items.
Yep.
So there's, back then there were just reasons why you needed to farm.
Okay, so talk about farming XP. Talk about studying with a mentor for whatever the thing is. Well, what if we use our multiplier idea? Let's say the fighter goes to a master swordsman, right? Maybe he training with them, and through sparring or whatever, he gets an XP multiplier, right? I beat this trainer, or I train with this person, whatever your criteria. Maybe because he's really advanced, he's teaching me something. Maybe I get triple XP for my event with that character, and that would kind of represent that training. Or let's say you have a wizard and you have an ancient tome, and it's really hard to decipher. Like it's a really difficult, arcana check. Well, maybe if you make it, it's triple XP because you had to work at it. You really had to earn it. Yeah. And it brings in the concept of skill challenges, which I really like. Like not everything necessarily has to be one roll. Like you can mine this book multiple times for more information. Like the GM says there's a potential of, let's say, 500 XP in this tome for your wizard. You're going to keep reading it over and over again to decipher that information. And say, you can only, it takes time over X amount of sessions. You can try to read it this many times. You might get all of the XP. You might get none of it.
It's interesting, because what you're talking about, made me think that adds another layer of reward. You could say, okay, wizard, your master gives you this, or you find this book and you find out that it contains this esoteric lore that is so rare that you can mine it for this many, whatever days, or let's say for this one level, you can mine it, and using the knowledge gained from it, you gain XP for your spells at a ×2 rate. Let's say you're
and that's represented by, I read this book, I learn this knowledge. If I get a level out of it, well, I learned Fireball from that book.
And it becomes an actual like memento. And or let's say you're a monk and you're like, I want to study from all the great masters. And this one master says, okay, well, I'm going to teach you the art of blind fighting. So if you're gonna fight, and you're gonna blindfold yourself in your fights, because that's what I want you to learn. But so for everything you defeat when you wear my blindfold on your face, anything you beat ×3 XP.
See what I mean? Like, and we're just quickly brainstorming, right? Because I kind of just hit you guys with this idea. All these different types of adventures, all this different type of downtime. I mean, it's all right there. Like, imagine if you sat down, like if you were a professional adventure writer, right? All the different type of things that you could do. Sure. You could take the game in so many different directions and really like play out those fantasies. Like people want to play a fighter because they have this idea of what they want that fighter to be. Like you could tailor their experience to the idea they have.
Not only that, but you could also have specialized NPCs. You could really tweak NPCs and go, if the player characters approach this NPC for this purpose, that this NPC will grant this bonus to whatever. You know what I'm saying? So then it's like, okay, maybe it incentivizes, like, okay, everybody, there's this much XP available. There's also 3 NPCs in this town that could grant you XP multipliers. They're scouring the town for these people.
Yeah. And I just had an idea. We always have an escort mission. Escort missions are kind of lame, but what if like the escort represents an XP multiplier for the group?
Sure.
Like whatever they do when that person is around, like if a fighter is defending this person, it's really important. So the damage they deal is at a multiplier.
And what if that person that they're escorting is some sort of like chronicler? So they're writing out the exploits of what the group is doing. Yeah. We need to keep this dude alive because he's making us advance faster, and he's chronicling our adventures, making us more popular.
Yeah. Just a thought. Maybe it's worth it. I know this is one of those things. Like you have these wonderful like delusions of grandeur when you go into a new adventure. Like I'm going to run a new game. I could see myself by week 4 really fucking regretting this because it's way more work than I think it is right now.
Right, you bastards are too lazy to go find the XP multiplier, you bastards.
Well, hey, it's not my fault. You guys are still level 3. You haven't done shit.
Right. You haven't talked to the right people.
Yeah. Again, it's like every system has problems. It's just, are we making the game better by creating new problems? Right. I accept a degree of problems in everything.
Yeah.
But is it? Mike always says is the effort versus payoff. Right. So.
Right.
Everything works into that equation.
Right. Sometimes, adding complexity for complexity's sake is just masturbation, but sometimes it really does do something. It can really enhance your game. So, all right, we're running out of time here. So,
shit.
Has anybody, Dan, has anybody messaged you, said they want some free dice?
I got somebody called Dibs.
Dibs.
Is that the only person?
That appears to be the only DM I got.
Okay.
I believe. Yep. So I will send that to you, Eric, and you can get in touch with him through Discord because he is in our Discord.
All right.
Again, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for staying with us, and let's give out some XP.
That's right. More XP.
Or not.
Or not.
XP. Or not. Fuck it. Only milestone.
All right. Bye, everybody.